Okay, we're getting ready to get started. And if you are not a speaker, go ahead and stay unmuted. And that will facilitate the call. All righty, great. My name is Jennifer Greer, and I want to welcome you to our panel discussion today, our legislative review, the high points and maybe some low points in the Alabama legislative session so far this year. It's hard to keep up with everything Alabama lawmakers are doing on important issues like gun safety, criminal justice, tax reform, environmental protection, public transportation, voting rights, and so many more issues, social justice reform, including that. So that's why MAD and our sister group HIVE, we hold 2 virtual panel discussions in the spring. We hold a legislative preview in January to let you know what's coming up with the session. And we hold a review near the end of the session, which I understand this year is going to be June 19. A little bit about us. MAD Make a Difference is a nonpartisan progressive group of women and allies formed in January 2017 to advocate for political change that moves our state forward for all Alabamians, not just a few. My co-leader is Shannon Haddock, and Shannon manages our chat room. Shannon, can you say hello?
Good afternoon, everybody.
Okay, great. Thank you, Shannon. And you can check out our Facebook page at www.facebook.com Alabama Women for the numeral political change. Our sister group HIVE is led by Kristen Resick and Megan Cheek. Kristen, can you say hello? I know Kristen is on her phone. Oh, great. Thank you. She's on a phone connection today. Hey, it's working. Super. And Megan Cheek. Megan, can you say hello and tell us just a bit about HIVE?
Hey there. HIVE started shortly after beginning of 2017 as just folks wanting to educate themselves on the issues and be knowledgeable about all the things and talk to our neighbors and, form informed ideas. So happy to be here.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we're going to dive right into our panelists today. We've got 6 amazing speakers. They are leaders of nonprofit, civic, and lobbyist policy groups that statewide and locally. And we've got a great panel, we think. We're going to be talking today to Kathy Jones of the League of Women Voters, Paula Wilson of Moms Demand Action, Dana Sweeney of Alabama Appleseed, Akiesha Anderson of Alabama Arise, Cindy Lowry of Alabama Rivers Alliance, and Marva Douglas of the Action Coalition for Transit. Okay, we're going to start with Kathy Jones today of the League of Women Voters. A little bit about Kathy. She is the president of the League of Women Voters of Alabama General and Education Fund Boards. An Alabama native, Kathy is originally from Birmingham. She worked as a space flight systems engineer and project manager at NASA Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville until retiring in 2016. In the summer of 2017, with the guidance of the League of Women Voters of Alabama, Kathy established and was president of the Tennessee Valley Local League, as well as serving as its voter services director from 2017 to 2020. She served as secretary for 2019, 2021, her current position with the League. Kathy considers herself fortunate to collaborate with an amazing and strong group of people across Alabama. You can check out the League's website. I think we've got that. Shannon has posted that in the chat, both the website and the Facebook page. So Kathy, take it away. I know you've got some important issues that you're going to talk to us about, and some urgent issues.
Yes, and I really appreciate your having this legislative review today. It's kind of fortuitous. Last week we were planning to come down here for a hearing on Wednesday, but then on Thursday we found out they moved it to Tuesday, and so when we found out that that happened, a lot of people's plans had to change. But HB 209 is the bill that I'm down here in Montgomery today to testify against. And they're having a public hearing that starts around 1 o'clock. And so we're going to be standing out here waiting for the meeting before ours to end. And then we're going to go in when it starts. I expect the room may be filled with people from all over the state. This bill, there's a lot of other bills that we've been tracking over this legislative session. Some of these you're going to hear about from these other organizations that there's a lot of bad bills out there. There's a few good ones. This one is a bad one. HB 209 would make felons out of people who are trying to help citizens vote absentee. If this law, if passed, would enact criminal would give felony convictions to people who are providing assistance, even to just handing someone an absentee ballot application would give them a felony conviction, as well as the person who received the help. They did, after it went to the Constitution Campaign and Elections Committee on April 14th, there was an amendment that was added that would allow a quote affirmative defense if someone were disabled or blind or couldn't read or write. But what that means is that when they get charged for getting help, then during their defense they could say, I'm blind, disabled, or I can't read or write. But that doesn't mean you don't get charged. It means that you are basically responsible for court cost. If you're convicted, you have fines and fees. You'll also have a criminal record. Even if it's dismissed, you'll have to pay to expunge your record. So this is all around a bad bill. It would make felons of people who are helping. There's so many of us. When I heard you describing your organization starting in 2017, there are a lot of people who got involved in politics after the 2016 election. And one of the things we want is for more people to participate in elections. And part of that is because Alabama does not have early voting, and they only have 1 day voting for regular election. The only other option is absentee voting, which is known to be complicated, cumbersome, error prone, and elections officials know that. And now they're going to make it a felony for people to help others to understand the process. One of the things that I think is really interesting is the number of organizations who have rallied quickly to come down to Montgomery to oppose this legislation. And we are hoping today they're going to see that we are not going away. This bill is bad. And if it does pass, then they're not going to hear the last of it, but we are trying to kill it. And, one of the things that I think is, I was looking at a fiscal note that was put into the bill. If you look on Allison, for every bill, you can see the fiscal notes related to that bill. And it's just really offensive that they say HB 209, as passed by the House, could increase receipts to the state general fund from fines, increased receipts to the state general fund, county general funds, and other funds to which court costs are deposited. Now, what that means, Alabama, because they underfund all the operations of government at every level, a lot of their operating costs are made on the backs of people caught up in the court system. And so what you would have is a whole new group of people helping to fund the operation of the government because of trying to help people vote. And so that's what this bill, while we're down here fighting it. And there's a lot of other bills that we're pushing on too, but this one is by far the worst for voting rights.
Kathy, can you explain the trajectory of this bill? If it were to pass the House, does it go to the Senate? Is there a companion bill in the Senate?
No, it's what happens with you can have bills coming in where there's companion bills in the House and the Senate, but that's not required. It's already gone through the House. So now it's been assigned to a Senate State Government Committee. And so today it's going to the Senate State Government Committee. If it passes with a favorable recommendation, it will go to the Senate floor. And if it passes there, then the bill is going to go to the governor's desk.
Okay, so it's already passed the House, so we need to be targeting our senators if we make any calls this afternoon.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, all righty. Real quickly, Shannon has posted a link in the chat on from the ACLU Alabama on criminalizing absentee ballot assistance. I can't think of anything more critical right now than defeating this bill. Kathy, anything else that we need to be thinking about?
Well, I was just going to mention, we are sticking around for tomorrow because there is one good ray of sunshine that we hope is going to get a favorable recommendation out of the CC&E committee. That is a bill which would eliminate the excuses off of the absentee ballot affidavit envelope. One of the things that when you look at, if you voted absentee, you'll notice that you had to put an excuse on your application. Right now on the affidavit envelope, there's a whole nother list of excuses that doesn't really match the other list, but almost matches. We've talked to the circuit clerk and the association and several of the circuit clerks, they were in agreement that that list could be removed from the affidavit envelope. We hope if that has the support of the circuit clerks, and we're hoping tomorrow we'll get a favorable recommendation out of that. That does not negate HB 209, but if it passes, if it, there's not much time left, but if it passed, then it would very much simplify the affidavit envelope, which should make voting absentee a little bit easier because of the fact that it's not so hard to read the forms.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being on top of this. We'll be watching the news tonight. We appreciate you.
Thank you. And you guys, thank you for doing this. And I look forward to, if you can share the recording, I'd love to see it later because I'm going to have to step off.
We will. We'll be following this on our Facebook pages. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
We're going to move right now to Dr. Paula Wilson, who's the co-chapter leader for Moms Demand Action Alabama. Originally from East Central Wisconsin, Paula earned degrees in geology from the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire and the University of Utah, where she earned a master's and a PhD. Before early retirement and moving to Auburn in 2014, she was a consultant in science education and a lecturer at Weber State University in Utah. When she's not volunteering, Paula enjoys birding, hiking, and cooking. So, Paula, there have been so much news on the gun safety issue this spring that I know you've got a lot on your plate. Let us know what you've been watching in Alabama.
Okay, yeah, I will. And thank you so much for the invitation and good afternoon to everyone. Yeah, so I'm pleased to give you a brief overview of firearm legislation in this year's session. It was a bit of an unusual year. Many more firearm bills filed this year than normal. We were watching 17 that very directly relate to firearm legislation. There are others that are a little more indirectly connected. Many of the bills that were filed were positive bills filed by Democrats, although unfortunately they were unable to get bipartisan support, and so they have not moved. Our Moms Demand Action goals this year were twofold. On the proactive side, we are working to obtain funding for hospital-linked violence intervention programs, and I'll explain what those are in just a brief minute. On the defensive side, we were looking to prevent bills that would militarize our schools, such as arming teachers. Very much on the watch for that. So far, nothing has popped up in that regard. So let me talk about our main focus this year, which is gaining funding for hospital-linked violence intervention programs, like the one at UAB Hospital in Birmingham, which just started one on February 14th and has had a very successful launch. We are partnering with Faith in Action Alabama in an effort to get $2 million allocated in the general fund for implementation of these programs in cities within Alabama. So I'll give you a brief explanation of what these programs are. This is taken from HIVE, which is an organization that specializes in developing public health related solutions to gun violence. So hospital-linked violence intervention programs combine the efforts of medical staff with trusted community-based partners to provide safety planning, services, and trauma-informed care to violently injured people, many of whom are boys and men of color. Engaging patients in the hospital during the recovery is a prime opportunity to improve lives and reduce retaliation and recidivism. The support network continues once patients are released with a pathway for outpatient care and other services. Because victims of interpersonal violence are at elevated risk for re-injury and violence perpetration, reaching them in these teachable moments in the hospital is key to successful intervention. Several studies have demonstrated that individuals are particularly receptive to interventions that promote positive behavior change at these moments in healthcare settings. So victims are provided links to community-based services, mentoring, home visits, follow-up assistance, and long-term case management during these interventions. Hospital-linked violence interprograms also work to identify and reduce risk factors such as substance misuse and chronic unemployment, and they promote positive factors such as social support, job readiness, and educational attainment. These programs cost about $1 million per year to implement, so the amount we are requesting is very inadequate to generate other programs throughout the state. But our goal this year is to get some amount in the budget and then work in future years to increase that. So right now, we are still waiting to hear if we are going to be successful in getting that $2 million inserted on the Senate side of the budget request.
Can I ask a question before you perhaps
Sure.
move to another topic? I think you mentioned domestic violence, and as a woman and a family person, this has been a concern. I worry that with the expansion of so many gun rights, in the concealed carry here in Alabama and other gun laws, that we're going to see more domestic violence and more lethal domestic violence. What do you know about that?
Well, these in regards to hospital-linked violence in the programs, yeah, there would be an intervention in the hospital and provide support and services to help those victims escape those situations.
Okay, so that would be a component of this $2 million program. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, just a brief overview of 3 bills that are progressing. HB 34 would make it unlawful to shoot or discharge a firearm on school property, and that quickly passed through the legislature and is awaiting Governor Ivey's signature. HB 392 would provide that a person prohibited from possessing a firearm under federal law is prohibited from possessing a firearm under state law and provides criminal penalties. That passed the House last week and is referred to Senate Judiciary Committee. HB 375 exempts gun safes and gun safety devices from sales and use tax. That passed the House unanimously last week and was referred to Senate Finance and Taxation Committee. And then I just wanted to finish up with a couple of notable bills that have not progressed so far. HB 12, this is very unfortunate. This has not progressed. This would fill a huge omission in our current permitless carry law. Currently, under state law, there is no failure to inform a law enforcement officer if you are concealed carrying a firearm. This bill would make it a misdemeanor for failure to make that report. The bill got no recommendation from the House Public Safety and Homeland Security Committee, so obviously it is not progressing. HB 123 establishes a misdemeanor penalty for adults who fail to reasonably secure firearms, resulting in a minor possessing the firearm on school grounds. The definition of reasonably secure in this bill is way too vague, but if passed, it would at least establish into law that there is a penalty for adults failing to securely store firearms. It was reported favorably out of House Judiciary Committee on April 12th, but no action since. And then finally, HB 28 would remove the pistol permit exemption for carrying a firearm on school grounds. Currently, those people with a permit can carry on school grounds. This was carried over by House Judiciary Committee on 4/5. And I think my time is up. So thank you.
Well, so one more situation, one more question. So it is permissible, legally permissible to carry a pistol on school grounds?
If you have a concealed carry permit, yes. Permits are
Okay.
no longer required, but if you go through the process, then you can concealed carry on school grounds.
Huh. Well, it's curious to me that wouldn't be getting some traction if they're
Yeah.
if it's illegal. If one of the bills that's getting traction is you can't discharge a gun on school grounds.
Yeah,
Of course, it's
Yeah.
also astonishing to me that that's not currently illegal.
I
That
know.
you can't discharge a gun on school grounds.
The law currently states you can't shoot into an empty school building or an empty school bus, but yeah. But
Okay, so of the three bills that are progressing, are the first two positive and the last one negative, or do you have thoughts on
no, the
those?
last one means you can buy a gun safe or a gun safety device and not pay sales tax.
It's a okay. So
That's
it's
a positive one.
Okay. It's because it's a gun safety device. Okay.
Yeah, not guns, gun safety device.
Okay, and how do you view the first two?
Well, the first one is positive, although Mountain Man Action is neutral because our stand is no guns should be on school property, period.
Okay.
So the law should read that way rather than
that you can't discharge
being
a gun.
piecemeal about it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so very much. We appreciate your courage and your fortitude on this issue. It's not an easy one.
No, it's not. It's a long haul here in Alabama.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move to Dana Sweeney, the statewide organizer for Alabama Appleseed Center for Law and Justice. Dana travels all across the state, sharing Appleseed's research, building relationships, and connecting people with opportunities to take action to the fight for a better future. Dana has lived in Alabama for his entire adult life, and he dreams of making this the sweet home that we all deserve. Dana, I know you have some good news for us and probably some challenges, so let's hear from you.
Yes. Well, thank you again for this invitation to be here. It's so good to see so many familiar faces on the call. For folks who were able to join sort of before the session began, you may remember that I shared 4 priorities that Alabama Appleseed had coming into this legislative session. And I feel pretty good about where we're at. I can share that we've got positive news on 2 of the bills, and that the other 2 we've not seen as much forward movement on. So I'll start with the good news so that I can spend the bulk of my time on that. I would say the happiest news we have to share from the State House has to do with debt-based driver's license suspensions. So for anyone who's familiar with Appleseed, who's been coming to these calls for the past couple of years, you know that we have kind of been tilting at windmills, trying to get the state of Alabama to end debt-based driver's license suspensions. And this year, after about 5 years working on this issue, we have had a major win at the State House. So under previous state law, if you got a traffic ticket or had court debts or whatever, and you couldn't afford to pay them, you missed a payment, state law required the state to automatically suspend your driver's license. That is hopefully no longer going to be the case. We had a bill that would basically create bumpers, barriers that give people more protection. And so a bill has now passed both chambers of the legislature that would allow people to miss one court hearing and up to 3 payments before a driver's license suspension would take place, rather than the existing state response, which is to automatically suspend people's driver's licenses the first minute that you can't afford to pay off the ticket. So this is going to give a lot of cushion, a lot of opportunity for people who have had their licenses suspended. We know it's not a small problem. There are about 170,000 people in Alabama who have their driver's licenses suspended for this reason of not being able to pay the ticket. So this is a huge development for close to 200,000 people across the state. We're really, really excited about it. Where things stand now. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Quick question. I always wonder what turns lawmakers around.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think persistence is a huge part of it. This is an issue that we have for the past 5 years put front and center and been talking to lawmakers year after year after year after year, sort of converting lawmakers, hearing out their skepticisms, their concerns, and also finding ways to talk about the issue in ways that are motivating to lawmakers who might not care about the issue for the same reasons that we do. So one example is, we spent a lot of time talking about the economic impact it has on our state to have close to 200,000 people who can't legally get to work, right? That's a huge problem. And so for some lawmakers, that was the most persuasive sort of argument that they really cared about.
Thank you.
And so where this stands now, as I mentioned, it's passed both chambers, both the Alabama State House and the State Senate. We had 2 bills and they got sort of brought together at conference, and it has now been sent to the governor's office. So we are awaiting signature on that bill, but it has passed through the legislature. And we are expecting the governor to sign the bill sometime in the next couple of days. So that is huge news for people across Alabama. We're very excited about that. The other issue priority that I wanted to revisit that I shared with y'all earlier this year has to do with second chances for people who got really, really harsh sentences decades ago under Alabama's Habitual Felony Offender Act. And so we started out the legislative session with a bill that I described to y'all, where we were looking to create a pathway for judges to review old cases of people who were age 50 or older and had been incarcerated for 15 or more years. And that bill underwent a lot of changes in the Alabama State House, a lot of amendments and sort of reshaping, but we're still pretty excited about where the bill is now. Effectively, as amended, the bill would create this type of pathway for a judge to review an old case for anyone who is sentenced under Alabama's 3 strikes law, the Habitual Felony Offender Act, prior to May of the year 2000. And there are hundreds of people who this law would apply to if passed. Hundreds of people who currently have no avenue out of prison, but who would have the opportunity for a judge to review their case if this passes. Our sponsors in this case, Representative Chris England, and now in the Senate, Senator Arthur Orr, have been really wonderful. And the bill passed the entire Alabama State House just last week. So that's a pretty huge development, I think, for the Alabama State House to be passing a bill that creates pathways for people out of prison. And we're really, really excited by that development. We're looking forward to seeing it move in the Senate. Although we're running out of time, so we're hoping to see that bill move quickly.
Well, and congratulations for getting bipartisan championship on that bill from England and Orr.
Yeah. It's been really great. And I should have mentioned on the driver's license bill as well, we had strong bipartisan support. We had Republicans, Senator Will Barfoot, and Democrat Senator Marika Coleman from the Birmingham area, as well as on the House side, Republican Representative Tim Wadsworth, who were all great sponsors. And bill numbers I saw asked about in the chat. The driver's license bill that I mentioned is SB 154. And the second chance bill that I was just describing is HB 229. And then just to give you the lightning round of the two other issue priorities that I shared with y'all earlier, so you know where things stand. One had to do, we are working hard to eliminate juvenile fines and fees in Alabama for when people who are not legal adults, children, pass through our legal system in the juvenile courts. We're trying to eliminate all of the legal debt that the state currently puts on the shoulders of children. That bill, for a lot of complicated like red tape reasons, was just really, really slow to move this legislative session. But it got its first reading in the Senate Judiciary Committee this morning. We're not expecting this bill to pass at this stage in the legislative session. It's kind of too late. But we've been hearing it's the first time we're introducing this issue to a lot of lawmakers, and the feedback has been really, really positive and supportive. So even if it doesn't pass this year, we're laying the groundwork to really fight hard for this next year. And then the final one that I wanted to share with you, I know when we all last got together before the session, I talked about the importance of Alabama investing in re-entry housing for people who are exiting Alabama state prisons. And it's less of like a bill so much as just like a budget issue, like getting it into the budget. And so that like sort of like nothing to report there yet, because the Senate has not yet passed its budget. So we're still working to try to get that included. But in a lot of ways, we just won't really know until the Senate goes ahead and passes the final version of that budget. So that's the update. Lots of good news to share, and also lots of good work still to do. So
thank you so much. This is a bright spot in the session, and we will try to stay involved and do what we need. Let us know what we need to do in terms of calling on those bills.
Absolutely. And I'll drop in the chat for the second chance bill that we're expecting to move. I will drop a link in the chat in just a minute, where you can contact your senators to support that now that it's moved on to the Senate side.
Great. Excellent. Now we're going to move to Akiesha Anderson with Alabama Arise. Akiesha is a legislative and policy attorney and registered lobbyist who serves as the policy and advocacy director for Arise. Her work there focuses on policy development, legislative drafting, policy advocacy, coalition building, and engaging with the public officials. As a Montgomery native, Akiesha holds a bachelor's degree in sociology from Alabama State University, a master's in public administration from Auburn University Montgomery, and a law degree from the University of Alabama. Akiesha, take it away.
Hi, everyone. I am super excited to be joining you all this time for a review. Similar to Dana, I am excited that some of the information I shared previously before the legislative session or near the start of the legislative session has resulted in some positive traction. So I also am appreciative that some of our partners, Alabama Appleseed, League of Women Voters, that, you know, multiple organizations have seen success this legislative session. So one of the big issues that I shared with you all previously was Arise's effort or plight to eliminate the state level grocery tax. And so this has been an issue that Alabama Arise has been working on for over 2 decades. So when we talk about Paula and Dana about persistence, you know, we have been seeing, you know, the power of persistence at Alabama Arise this year. So this legislative session, you all may be aware, but our grocery tax bill, so SB 257 by Senator Jones, was co-sponsored by every senator in the Senate. So that was really exciting to see. And then the House version of this bill, HB 469, which was sponsored by Ways and Means General, our education chair, Representative Garrett, was sponsored by 100 representatives in the House out of 105. So that means 96% of the legislature has signed their name onto the grocery tax bills, which is super exciting because, again, this has been an issue that has been decades, you know, in the making. And so say that to say that HB 469, the House version of the bill, will be in committee tomorrow. And so we do anticipate that this bill will have an easy path forward now that it is up in committee. It will be in committee tomorrow. You all probably are aware that there are only 7 legislative days left, or actually 6 now. So yes, what day is today? I'm sorry, time runs together. today's Tuesday. So today means there are 7 legislative days left. When they go in today will be the 7th day. So by Thursday, there will be 6. But I say that to say we are running out of time, but we do have faith that the grocery tax bill will be able to make it to the finish line this year, right before the clock ticks, at 0. And so in addition to grocery tax, another development is that we also have for a very long time been fighting for Medicaid expansion. Although there is a bill that has been introduced to expand Medicaid, what has been happening is behind the scenes, there has been conversation by Blue Cross Blue Shield with the governor's office and others to try to create an Alabama solution to Medicaid expansion. And so I was at an event with Congresswoman Terry Sewell last week, and the CMS director, who's the person who will have to approve any Medicaid waivers or alternative plans. And the Congresswoman did share that essentially we are expecting to see something similar to an Arkansas model of Medicaid expansion, where there will be private coverage paid for by public funds. And so that is something that we do not expect to see legislatively enacted this legislative session, but we are hopeful that after the legislative session ends, that there will be some executive action taken to go ahead and ensure that Alabamians have health coverage, which will be major. So we are hopeful, excited about that. And
congratulations. That is major. That is huge.
Thank you. Fingers crossed that, it works out, but it was really nice to hear Congresswoman Sewell directly talk to the CMS director about this might be coming to the deadline soon. And so in addition to the good things happening at the State House, I do acknowledge that there are still some negative things happening that Alabama Rise has been at the forefront of trying to fight against. So for example, I'm sorry, I don't know if we shared this at the beginning, but Alabama Rise specifically works on issues that impact Alabamians marginalized by poverty. And so one piece of legislation, HB 24, is a bill that has made it throughout the whole legislature. So it has made it to the governor's desk. And this criminalizes people who are standing on the side of the road asking for money. So it criminalizes homelessness. And so this piece of legislation, we tried our hardest, to keep this bill from passing, but we are hopeful that this bill will be challenged legally and that it will be stricken down as unconstitutional. Montgomery did pass a similar local ordinance in the past, and it was ruled unconstitutional. So Alabama, hopefully, will find itself in court again, and that bill will hopefully, be overturned that way. Another piece of legislation that we're concerned about is SB 242. This is a piece of legislation that will remove the cap on what a landlord can charge for a security deposit. Currently, landlords can only charge 1 month's rent worth of one month's rent for a security deposit from new tenants. This bill, however, will remove that cap altogether. So a landlord has the ability to charge whatever they would like for a security deposit, which we know will only make housing accessibility. It will make it worse here in Alabama. So we're really concerned about that piece of legislation, but we do think that that bill will not have time to make it throughout the process. So that bill likely will not pass this year, but it is something that we need to be concerned about for next legislative session.
And it also sounds like it opens the door to discrimination.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I have no doubt that there will be disparities with regard to who does and does not get access to how being able to pay the increased deposit. Absolutely. And then finally, another piece of legislation that we have been fighting against that we are hopeful will not pass this legislative session is something that has been referred to as the PRICE Act. And this piece of legislation essentially will redirect education trust fund money to parents so that they can essentially get up to $6,000 to homeschool their children, to put their children into private schools, alternative schooling options, etc. And so that will definitely, if it passes, will have a major hit on the education trust fund, which is already struggling, something to the effect of close to $600 million, which is something we're really concerned about. So that is a piece of legislation that has been moving through the Senate. It has seemingly stalled a little bit in the House. And so we're hoping that that piece of legislation continues to stall and does not make it out of the legislature this year. But
And it's called the PRICE Act.
Yep, PRICE Act. That is SB 202 in the Senate and HB 295 in the House.
And I understand it has no accountability measures. So as a taxpayer, I have no guarantee that those kids will be educated. So,
yeah, it's essentially writing a blank check. It is fraught for, fraud and, just misuse of funds, etc. So that is extremely alarming. Yes. And so hopefully by this time next week, grocery tax will have passed. And so if so, please make sure you follow Rise on Instagram, Facebook, etc. You all will definitely, see the news there once we have some more news about some of the bills that we're working on, continuing to move through the process.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the update and thanks for all your hard work. This is wonderful.
Hey, no problem.
Okay, we've got 2 more speakers, and I think we're going to get everybody in today. Cindy Lowry is next. Cindy is the Executive Director of the Alabama Rivers Alliance, a statewide environmental advocacy organization. She joined the staff in 2005 as Watership Leader Coordinator, was promoted to Executive Director in 2007. She's a native of Alabama, was raised in Aniana. She received her bachelor's degree in wildlife science from Auburn, her master's in public administration from UAB. Cindy, take it away.
All right. Thank you so much, Jennifer and all for having me. Also, thanks to everyone participating in this call. This good news is exciting that we're hearing. It's hopeful. I know there's a lot of challenges always in the Alabama legislature, but sometimes the hopefulness doesn't get as much attention in the news. And so you have to be in conversations like this to hear the nitty gritty. And I'm just really excited to hear all that's happening. And I'm hoping I can continue that trend. So when we talked in the first part of the session, the Alabama Rivers Alliance let me give a little background. We're a statewide nonprofit that works with local watershed-based, like riverkeeper-based groups, local community, Friends of the Creek groups, anyone who cares about water and environmental issues in their community. And so we partner with hundreds of organizations around the state on various issues. And we have, in the environmental movement, we have dabbled in the legislature for several years, but relatively speaking, compared to groups like League of Women Voters and Alabama Rise, we are still in the early stages of figuring out this whole legislative game and where it fits into our work. And our new strategic plan, which we'll be releasing soon at the Alabama Rivers Alliance, is really focused on actively working in the legislative arena more and really building relationships strategically with legislators so that we can have some champions. We don't really have any environmental champions in the legislature. Not that there aren't supporters, but no one's taking that on as their mantle of what they're running on and championing. So we want to build some of that, and we just want to build the environmental literacy of our legislators and those relationships. So we're starting that this year, working closely with Conservation Alabama, which is our League of Conservation Voter affiliate in the state. And they have a C4 and a PAC, so they have a little more ability to do some things that we can't do as a C3. And so we're partnering closely with them for this kind of long game strategy that we're hoping we'll come back in 5 years and tell y'all how it went. But
congratulations! It sounds much needed.
Yeah, I think it's going to be great. And so we started this year with the Safe and Healthy Outdoor Recreation Act, also known as the SHORE Act. And that is a partnership with Coosa Riverkeeper and Conservation Alabama to develop signage or require signage where fish consumption advisories are on our waterways, and to codify the fish consumption advisory program, which is being done right now by the Health Department and the Department of Environmental Management and Department of Conservation, but it's not codified. So it could be taken away at any time. And also to form an advisory committee for this program that is has stakeholders on it that can meet once a year and try to figure out how to improve the program. We have fish consumption advisories like don't eat this fish or don't eat this fish more than once a month on many waterways, a majority of our waterways in Alabama, including all of our lakes where a lot of people do fish. And we also have a lot of subsistence fishing. So this is a health issue, it's an environmental justice issue, and certainly a recreational issue. thankfully, our state has decided outdoor recreation is very important to our economy and to attracting good quality jobs and applicants for jobs. So this is an outdoor recreation focused bill, and it has passed the House unanimously, sponsored by Craig Lipscomb. And it passed oddly. We are also learning a lot about this legislative game and how crazy it can get. It had to go through 2 committees in the Senate, which I've heard no one else has ever had to do. So it was something about the way the companion bills. We have SB 105 in the Senate, which is Linda Coleman Madison sponsored, and then HB 297 in the House. And the way they just happened to cross pathways, it got assigned to 2 different committees in the Senate, but they passed both of them. So we're waiting for, yeah, we're excited that we're waiting for the bill to get onto the Senate calendar to be voted on. And if it gets there, hopefully before the end of the session, then we will, if it passes there, it will go to the governor. So we're very excited about the possibilities. The original bill did have one more aspect to it. It had signage for pollution outfalls, which is everywhere industries discharge pollution. That did get amended out. We knew that was going to be a little heavier lift, and so we were willing to let go of that this year and build on it in future years. But we do think this is a hopeful sign that our legislators are paying a little more attention to outdoor recreation and safety and health of our waterways, and we're just praying it gets on the Senate floor. So we will do a big action alert push once we see it on the calendar. But if you were talking to your senators, please mention SB 105 and the Safe and Healthy Outdoor Recreation Act. I'll touch on a couple of other things that are positive, and then I've got a few that we're just kind of watching with interest. The ARPA funds that passed in the early part of the session, the special session in the early part, the last tranche of American Rescue Plan Act funds, the legislature again allocated a significant amount of funds to sewer and water infrastructure. So we're very pleased to see them another $400 million out of those funds to go mostly through the Alabama Department of Environmental Management State Revolving Loan Fund program. But we're actively working with ADEM in that program to try to get these funds where they need to go. They did also allocate another $5 million to the Black Belt Unincorporated Wastewater Program that is putting some on-site systems on the ground in the Black Belt, and particularly in Lowndes County, where there have been so many publicized challenges there. So we're continuing to follow that infrastructure money and hopeful about the way that's getting spent. But there's still some challenges and barriers to the communities that need it the most, and we're advocating around that as well. We also see a dam safety bill that we did not initiate. We're not sure exactly who initiated it. It's SB 284. Alabama is the only state in the country without a dam safety program. So this a dam safety bills have been introduced in the past. It's been a little while, and we've supported them in the past. This is not the same bill. It's not quite as robust as we've seen in the past, but it is, and it only applies to state-owned dams. So this is not going to be as all the dams by any means in the state. It's just a handful, but it does create a program. It creates it under the Department of Environmental Management to inspect dams, and it's entities that are not state-owned can opt to be a part of the program. I'm not sure that anyone will, but they can opt to be a part of the program. It also creates a fund for rehabilitation of a loan program for rehabilitation of dams. Of course, we want to be sure that dams that are not needed, that may be falling down and that are no longer being used, are actually taken out rather than rehabilitated. But this does seem like a program that can start something that we need in this state and be built on in the future. So we're just kind of we're looking at that. That one was introduced in the Senate by Chambliss, and it's been reported out of committee favorably, but that's as far as it's gone so far. The other thing that's back on the outdoor recreation, Senator Andrew Jones out of Gadsden, who's also the one on the grocery tax bill or the originator of that, has introduced a bill relating to outdoor recreation to provide for the development of a strategic trail network, and also to provide for grants for qualified donations of property, to create something called the Sweet Trails Alabama Project Fund and the Sweet Trails Alabama Acquisition Fund. So it has to do with sort of acquiring land for trails and connecting all of the trails in sort of one place. And this is part of, I think, the focus the state has with an Outdoor Recreation Council to look at, and the Innovation Commission that they put together to look at enhancing our outdoor recreation and tourism around that. So this is SB 298, and it's on the Senate calendar today, and we're definitely supportive of that idea. And let's see what else. So the last two I want to mention, we're watching those. I don't really know enough about them to talk super intelligently about them. One of them, SB 40, has already been signed into law, but this is just a great example. I'm going to the negative now. I gave you all the positive I could give you. This is an example of how something can get into law or get into a bill and then get into law that is very subtle, but that can have consequences that that are bad for the environment. And this one, Energy Alabama launched a campaign to try to fight it, but it wasn't successful. It prohibits local governments from passing any ordinance, law, regulation, or rule that would require latent features in new residential construction. Now, that doesn't sound like it's anything about the environment, but really what a latent feature in construction could be set when you build a new home, setting it up for solar panel installation later, not right when you're not going to use it right away, but later. Or setting up your home for EV charging of your car. Those kind of things are much cheaper when they get into the initial construction phase rather than retrofitting them later. And this bill prohibits local governments from being proactive and saying you have to do this while you're in construction so that it's, or requiring it for during construction. So it's just kind of a little thing that seems benign and it's just one of those hurdles we have to overcome in order to really encourage and incentivize people to move towards cleaner energy and set ourselves up to be in a position when these things do come into our state that we can do them. The other one is HB 188, that is an environmental, social, and governance investing bill, and has made it out of committee. It would prohibit the consideration of ESG criteria when awarding public contracts and would require a responsible bidder, as a condition of being awarded a public contract, to certify under penalty of perjury that its employees will not be subject to personal ESG rating as a basis of hiring, firing, or evaluation. Environmental, social, governance criteria in investing has its pros and cons, but generally it is looking at whether or not a company is behaving well within the environmental standards, within social standards, and with good governance within their corporation. And our state is saying it's basically prohibiting the public contracts from looking at companies that use these criteria. So, looking more into that if you're interested. You can Google ESG online and learn more about it. But it is just another kind of let's not work with companies that are good actors when it comes to the environment and when it comes to social policies and good governance. So it just, it's just seems like a bill that is going in the wrong direction. And that's HB 188. We're not actively working on that either. It's just one we kind of watched with interest and concern.
Cindy, great overview, and thank you. Two thoughts on the ESG bill. I've been reading about that nationally, and that could cost Alabama a lot of money because many of the companies that are using ESG criteria are managing future risk, and those who are not using them are not managing future risk. So it really is a quantifiable, financially quantifiable risk management tool that we may not be able to use here in Alabama if that bill goes further. But also,
definitely.
Observation. Thank you for not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good on the shore bill and on the dam safety measure. Both of the things that I'm hearing from you is that concerned activists, groups like yours, policy groups like yours, realize that if you get 75% of the battle won, take that victory and go on to fight another day, because I think that is the only way we're going to be able to move forward here in Alabama. And I think as an activist, sometimes I lose sight of that. My ideology and my idealism gets ahead of me. So it is encouraging and affirming to hear that strategy coming from your group. And I know that from on this call, the other groups are applying it too. And that's how we make Alabama a better state for everybody. Definitely. Thank you so much. All righty, our last speaker today, but an important speaker because she's new to our group, is Marva Douglas. Marva is an ardent advocate for public transportation, advancing the cost through memberships in 2 transit organizations, the Transit Citizen Advisory Board and a volunteer group called Action Coalition for Transit. Many of you may know Marva if you live here in the Birmingham area. She's a retiree from South Central Bell Telephone Company. She formerly owned 2 local businesses, the Learning Zone and Aldrich Repertory Theater, and she is a working actor among many other activities. Marva, can you bring us up to date on public transit?
Yes, thank you for allowing me to speak today. I'm a member of Action Coalition for Transit, and we're called ACT, that's our acronym. We're a group of volunteers who want better public transportation in Birmingham and throughout the state. I'm going to give you some of the reasons why. Number 1, in 1952, automobile lobbyists got an amendment passed that mandated all gasoline tax revenue be used for bridges and highways. As a result, the legislature did not make public transportation a line item in its budget. So for more than 70 years, there's been no money for public transportation. That needs to change. Birmingham and a few surrounding cities currently provide funding for the buses that you see, but that's not enough funds for service that would help make people's lives better. Buses run once every hour on some routes and every 90 minutes on others. Now, to be efficient, buses need to run at least every 15 minutes so people can have access to jobs, access to the local colleges, and students can get to enjoy local amenities, do volunteer service so they can join the Honor Society, or to have summer jobs. Currently, restaurant workers, hospital workers, hourly workers, people with service jobs, walk miles to their jobs daily in order to clock in on time. Retirees who want to volunteer their services or start businesses must maintain cars in order to do so. There are no buses after 10 p.m. and no bus service at all on Sundays. Pedestrians are killed walking to and from jobs because automobile traffic is insane and many streets have no sidewalks. Here's what the legislature has done. In 2018, the legislature passed a bill called the Alabama Public Transportation Trust Fund, but has not been able to find funds to put in it, even though they have assigned the Alabama Department of Economic and Community Affairs, ADECA, to administer it. So what can change? According to newspaper articles, Alabama has been given $400 million for use over 5 years in the infrastructure money that has come to the state, and it's specifically for public transit. So far, the legislature hasn't mentioned those funds or even referred to them in this legislative session. ACT has a website called alabamaact.org or alabamaact.org. Please visit it and consider joining its members' efforts to get that money into the trust fund. And while I was listening here, I think Dana mentioned the second chance law. We've had prisoners who have been let out, and they are expected to be able to interview for jobs, find jobs, get to work on time. With no public transit in the state that's reliable for anybody to use, the legislature, in the news story where they released the information about the prisoners being let out, they also let us know that they were putting $4 million in a recidivism fund because they expect them to come back if they cannot go and get jobs. So finally, I have a request for you. When you have time, please total your monthly cost for driving your car. Once you've gotten that total, please multiply it by 12 so we'll know how much you spend per year for your car. Currently, a bus pass is $44 a month. Please multiply that times 12 to see how much that totals. Then subtract that from your yearly total that you just did for your car. I think you'll be surprised at the savings you'll net.
Wow.
Now, it is my hope that you will join ACT because we don't have a bill going yet. We need a sponsor of a bill. We need to get people to understand the need. I'm here pleading with you to understand that old people like me, I'm 83 years old, will be 84 on the 31st. I still drive, but I'm terrified of the people who are around me driving. I'm sure I'm not the only one. What we do need is to have public transportation that's accessible so that people can increase their education. There are 7 colleges here, not one bus line that they can take to it. Our children cannot volunteer. And I've left my script really, because I'm really pleading with you. Please visit alabamaact.org, and you'll find out what we're doing. And please join us. And then maybe by next year, we will have a bill at least or something that will start us toward getting better transportation. Thank you so much for listening to me. And I have a sheet of paper with questions for you that it should be in the chat, I think.
We will email. Marva has a little quiz, and I'm not sure we're going to be able to get it in the chat right now, but we will email that to everybody on the call. It is a great tool. In addition to the exercise that she mentioned, I think this could be a pivotal moment in the Alabama's transportation future, and people like Marva are, it may be too much to call you a prophet, but you're certainly forward thinking and prescient. But I'm going to call you a prophet. Hey, because with this $400 million in infrastructure, ideally you would hope to get all of it in the public transportation fund, but if we can even get a sizable amount of it in there and push for that and to begin to advocate for public transportation. One thing I heard importantly from Dana when I asked him what made lawmakers turn around on something, and he said persistence and messaging. So if we start today with persistence and messaging on this transportation issue, I would hope in 5 to 10 years that we've really made a difference on it. And my gosh, with the legislature looking so closely at workforce development, what is more critical to workforce development in any area than transportation? You cannot get a job, you cannot serve a job. And with new people coming up and needing jobs, with returning citizens from our social justice system, and with boomers retiring and not really reaching a point where they don't really need to be safely driving, I think we may have a convergence of factors that suddenly put this issue on people's radar. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you everybody for joining us. It's been a great session. Please follow both MAD Make a Difference and HIVE email us and get on our email list. Keep up with our panel discussions, which tend to occur in the spring and the fall, and stay with us. And we're in this together. Thank you so much.
Thanks so
Bye-bye.
much, y'all.